Hi, it's Boris from TheShim.com, and today we're talking about 3 exercises that are better than the pause deadlift. Now, I've been known to scrutinize the pause deadlift merely for the sheer fact that I don't like that you teach yourself to stop the barbell. The deadlift is a concentric only based movement, so we've got to break the bar off the floor, stand tall with it at lockout, and by pausing, depending upon where you pause, doesn't really matter, but teaching yourself to slow down, usually the pause is done right below the knee, where you're mechanically the weakest, is teaching you to slow down through that area where you ideally want to be accelerating through that point. So we're going to talk about 3 exercises today, how you can build your deadlift without having to do the pause deadlift so you can see just as much benefit without the drawbacks. Let's see what they are. So the first exercise we're going to talk about is the chair deadlift. Now, I'm a big fan of this exercise regardless of whether you pull conventional sumo. It's going to build your hips, your low back, and your lockout. So what you're going to need a box or something to sit on that's going to put your hips around your sumo position or your deadlift height position, as long as it's in that area. This is pretty close for me. And then we're going to have our bar out in front of us. Now, the reason I like this is because we're going to get that same kind of pause-based benefit as the pause deadlift allows. However, we're going to mainly focus this in our hips and keeping our arms good and long. Now, one reason why people like the pause deadlift is they say, oh, well, it teaches you to be long in the pull to really reach for that bar and pull that slack out of the bar, and you're gonna pause just off of that, and it's supposed to teach you position. However, the best way to learn the position is to keep your hips reinforced with something, and then we can keep our arms long, and we can literally just use our hips to break the barbell off the floor. And that's gonna be very beneficial, especially for sumo. You can even do this conventional as well from this position. It's definitely a lot more low back, so I think this is definitely more sumo friendly. But if you're conventional, the sumo piece can still really help you. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna put your feet out in that sumo position, keep your arms good and long, chest stays tall, and you're gonna reach over to grab the bar, pull with your hips to where you would normally pause for a brief second, and then you've got your chair deadlift. Now, what I like to add personally is a +1, or where you stand up on the 3rd rep. So we're gonna do those 3 reps here. And after I get here, I'm gonna hold this position, drive my hips forward. See how the bar didn't move anywhere. I met the bar with my hips, which is super valuable because as we get to this position here is usually where we're gonna have to figure out our lockout, and especially for you conventional lifters. Now, the second exercise is called a Boris deadlift, and the thing I really like about this is it kind of takes some ideas from the pause deadlift, but what we're gonna do is still train full reps, but really utilize that pause to own that position, but not use it to teach us to slow down midway through our pull. So again, what I really don't like about the pause deadlift is the fact that when we get here, we purposely stop and then continue to go through. The first issue is no one's truly honest with their pauses. Their pauses look like trash, and they're really more of just a slow down rather than actually getting a good quality isometric. Isometrics have a ton of research behind them about improving the strength at particular joint angles, which is an argument for the pause deadlift, but if you're not actually getting a good quality pause, you're kind of making a moot point there with that point of exercises. So with the Boris deadlift here, we can implement that pause very, very strictly. 1, 2, maybe even a 3 count is what I give some lifters to really teach them to own that position, but then we can actually stand tall. So this is very similar to the chair deadlift, but we're going to do it from the standing position. And I think this works a lot better for conventional pullers than sumo, but I've also seen it help sumo pullers as well. So I'm going to show you conventional wise, be our normal deadlift stance. We're going to keep our arms long, all that kind of good stuff. I'm going to pull the bar up to just below the knee, but I'm going to hold that position for a solid 2 count and then return back down to the floor. So arms long here, pull, 1, 2, down, 1, 2, down, 1, 2, down, and then a full rep. So I'm getting that time under tension here that I want, but I'm actually stopping and holding. I'm not doing a pause deadlift where I go here. You see the bar literally just slow down. If you're doing your pause deadlift and you're saying 1, 2, 3, and then coming here, that's one thing. But most pause deadlifts are looking like this. I'm sorry, but there is no pause there. And the third exercise that I really like is a deficit deadlift. Now, while this doesn't directly correlate to having that pause that a pause deadlift would normally have, the one benefit here is that we're pulling with a bigger range of motion, which means more time under tension, which means the longer that we have to push through the floor to bring the barbell to lockout. So by having longer time under tension, we're making the deadlift inherently harder, but we're also focusing more of a push from the floor. So another argument on the pause deadlift is that by keeping your arms long, it's teaching the athlete or the lifter how to push through the floor to get the barbell into that position. Well, the best way to learn how to push is to find something to stand on, something that's about 1 to 2, maybe even 3 inches if you want to get really gnarly with it, that you can stand on, that's going to make you have to create that push more. So by my feet being elevated here on this DC block, for me to reach long with my arms, I'm gonna have to drop my butt to get more of my quads involved to push through the floor. So arms are long, reach, as you can see, my hips are way lower than when I'm here, you know, hips high. My hips have to be lower here, arms still stay long, and then what's gonna happen is I'm gonna actually blow through that point. I'm gonna have to push harder and faster to accelerate through that sticking point of where I would normally pause. So normally that pause would happen here, but what's happening is I'm having to push so fast, I'm actually gonna blow through that mini sticking point of where you're having the issues with your pause deadlift, that you don't have to pause anymore. You can actually learn it blowing through that area. So you don't actually have to teach yourself to stop. So those are my 3 exercises that you can do beside the pause deadlift to help build your deadlift. When it comes to programming, I've got all these exercises for the most part filmed on my YouTube channel, where you can find more detailed information about how you might program them and implement them more specifically towards you. But I think the big thing is finding out why you're doing the pause deadlift and how it can actually harm your deadlift in the long run. And then the other thing is holding yourself accountable on your pauses. The one thing I really do like about Tri-Basic Training and Cal Dietz is that he's found that isometrics need to be 6 seconds to be the most ideal to reduce the stretch shortening cycle, which there isn't really any for the deadlift because it's just a concentric only push from the floor. However, by spending 6 seconds in that position, that would humble a ton of lifters. So give that a try if you really want to try a pause deadlift and see if that actually has any kind of carryover to some strength in that area. But again, what I'm really trying to get at here is that if you're going to do the pause deadlift, really own that pause. It shouldn't not be a slow down, because you're teaching yourself to slow down and then ultimately get out of position whenever you have maximal loads. If your pause deadlift is honestly like 2 or 3% lower than your regular pull, that to me tells me that you're not really pausing, you're just slowing the bar down intentionally. So again, I would actually prefer something like a Boris deadlift or a chair deadlift in that situation. One, you can use significantly less load and you can spend more time in that problematic area for your deadlift. The ultimate thing that's going to come down to is obviously finding what works best for you, but also managing recovery as well, because the deadlift is so taxing on the body, because it is a concentric only based movement. You've got to get that bar to break off the floor, so you're asking for high CNS outputs to create that, and even just being half an inch or so out of position, especially on maximal loads, is going to make or break your pull, especially when it comes meet time. So the other thing I really like about those 3 drills that I showed you is that it hammers position. And by hammering position, especially either from the floor or being isometrically strong in that position through increased time under tension, you're gonna find that your deadlift starts to soar with a fraction of the weight and you're gonna be more recovered. So if you've got any questions, let me know in the comment section below. Thanks, have a great day.